The middle class does not get anything. There's all of the states in the north take away taxes from the south and things like that. That's really not how taxes work. Taxes are a misunderstood concept in this country because of lack of knowledge. If we do it deliberately for certain purposes, that's completely fine. But there's a lot of rhetoric that makes us look a little foolish when we discuss things like, oh, these people take away all our taxes. Oh, we carry the burden of other people. It's easy to do that. However, it's not correct. If you haven't been here before, welcome to A Questioning Mind. I am Sagarika. I discuss all things policy and culture on this channel. In today's video, what I want to do is explain a few concepts behind taxes. In the financial year of 22-23, 4 states contributed to a massive 70% of the overall tax collection. Those states were Maharashtra, Delhi, which is a union territory, Uttar Pradesh and Tamil Nadu. This is according to data from the Indian Express, and what it says is that this total amounted to almost 11.4 lakh crores in that fiscal year. Now, you must have heard a lot of information about taxes. Speaking of taxes, this is not a direct transaction where you pay money and the government gives you roads in turn. Taxes do not entitle you to anything in particular except administration. Now, this has not always happened appropriately, and taxes are assumed to be high for a certain class of people. Taxes are assumed to be non-existent for a certain class of people. There's a few reasons behind it. So those reasons are what we get into today. So if this is something you're interested in, continue watching, because taxes have existed forever. Since we were governed by kings and aristocrats, they could tax 90% at times. They could ask you to pay taxes based on religion, based on your community, based on the occupation that you were involved in, and things like that. Some of them made sense, some of them made less sense, and were oppressive in nature. Now, there is this rhetoric, especially in India, that taxes are oppressive to the people who pay the majority of taxes. It is true that our user base is incredibly small. Less than 3% of the country's entire population actually contributes to income taxes. However, the entire population contributes to indirect taxation, which is a very large portion of tax collection in total. Considering some of the misconceptions, what I want to really break the myth about is that people who pay more taxes are entitled to better things in turn. It does seem logical. I'm not denying that, one may feel badly about things. But what this does is essentially symbolize a lack of understanding. And look, if you were to pay a politician a certain sum of money and they delivered on that promise to you in particular, what would that mean? That's essentially a bribe. And however the rhetoric goes, I know it's quite fancy and quite trendy to say that taxes are essentially a bribe to the government to get your citizenship, and I've come across posts like that. That is really a misunderstanding. Taxes contribute to a lot of things, but essentially it offers the entire population of a place, of a state, of a country a certain sense of governance, and that can include whatever the government decides on. So suppose it's roads, suppose it's water, suppose it's defense, suppose it's the welfare of the poor. All of those things are taken out of the taxes that one contributes via direct as well as indirect taxes. Corporations pay taxes, we pay taxes when we're eating outside, when we're ordering food, when we're going to watch a match, when we're paying our broadband bill. We pay taxes all the time, and it's not even that large an amount that a lot of the middle classes with access to the internet think. However, the income tax paying bracket that calls itself the middle class, whoever grew up middle class, may not have continued to remain in the middle class, but there is this understanding that we're all middle class just because we grew up a certain way. Anyway, so this population is assumed to bear the burden of taxation. Taxes enable overall governance. What this means is that this allows the government to create critical infrastructure, to raise the destitute to a decent standard of living, create economic opportunities where none exist, and general well-being of its citizenry. This creates an opportunity for everyone who is unable to contribute to taxes right now to do so at a later stage. This, it's very common to talk about equitability and inequality in the same breath, and taxes are the one way that a democratic government, if it has the political will to do so, creates those opportunities for those who do not have the access and opportunities right now. Eventually, it helps in increasing the contributor base. So right now, if less than 3% of the population pays income taxes, what this does is increase that layer so that that base that can contribute to direct taxation a few years down the line. Maybe 5 years down the line, we see a very large part of the population entering the middle classes, and then they will be able to contribute to higher taxes, right? So this is what taxes enable. And they have forever served this purpose. They have even topped 90% at a time when the tax base was even smaller. The number of contributors was even smaller because we were a poorer nation. So can you imagine the burden of tax on those people at that time? So it's not that the middle classes are now burdened, and I understand that expectations go up as incomes rise and as standards of living increase, which has happened over the last decade immensely. And so the expectations from the government, from those in charge of our governance are higher. However, this should not create misunderstandings, because this is the exact misunderstanding that allows vested interest groups to create a lot of division. At least economically, one should be aware of, these discussions, because it's very easy to sit in a group having dinner or talking in the workspace and saying things like, the North takes away half our taxes, bro, this is not fair. It's easy to do that. However, it's not correct, because if anyone has any basic level of understanding, you will be proven to not have logical analysis in that sphere, and you may not want that in all spaces. The reason I say this is because, look, at this point, the state of Uttar Pradesh is doing magnificently well economically, and the states of Kerala and Karnataka are not. At different points in time, across the times of our independence, different states have done better. If we were to further break this down, this whole illogical idea that those who are contributing more are entitled to more, it just goes to show that, okay, the Ambanis and the Adanis and the Birlas and the L&Ts can essentially bribe the government and get things done their way, get better roads for their people, for their employees, and that's not how it works. Whatever these guys are paying also come to us, also come to the poorest of the poor who get those gas cylinders that are part of a scheme for that. This goes to the ration food distribution, public distribution systems that enable the poor to get rationed food grains that allow them to live better lives. So this is essentially how tax works, and that is why, moving on from corporations and individuals, high-paying individuals, to states, what happens is a state that does better economically does contribute to the overall well-being of the nation. And a state that is not doing quite as well might be more entitled to those taxes, just so it can come up to a level where it is better able to compete and contribute. Because the federal system works in that way, that some states do, everything is not equally divided. However, the idea is to be equitable. And these are concepts that are very, very commonplace in social, in the humanities discourses, but they must be better understood, not as mere propaganda and rhetoric, but to mean what they essentially should mean, and in a more applicable sense. So taxes are a really good way to build equitability if they are used for the correct things and do not go into the pockets of politicians, as has happened since decades. And it is something that a lot of people have gotten used to thinking that taxes contribute to. So if one has noticed the changes around the country in terms of infrastructure, in terms of defense, in terms of the sectors that are coming up, then one might understand that this is something that our hard-earned money has contributed to the growth of a nation. That of our parents has contributed to probably filling the coffers of politicians. And so another thing is that today people who speak in English, people who've had the opportunity to work in developed sectors such as the multinational organizations, a lot of these people consider themselves middle class, think of themselves as bearing more of the burden. Now, according to the Household Consumption Expenditure Survey conducted recently by the government, for the first time ever in the history of the country, rural consumption has outpaced urban consumption. The change in rural consumption has outpaced the growth in urban consumption. What this means is inequality is getting lower, and that is a topic for another discussion. But what I want to tie to for today's topic is that the rural population is paying higher taxes as well, indirectly so, but consumption means a generation of taxes and overall economy. So one need not keep thinking that there is this particular urban middle class that contributes infinitely higher than others. Yes, indirect taxes, yes, it hurts a lot, I understand, but it is what we pay to benefit our fellow human beings, and that should not be a cause for that much concern. I think, however, you're welcome to disagree, and if you do so, leave me a comment down below as to why you would want to not help others out. That should be an interesting discussion as well, and I will try my best to get back to you in the comments, if you're polite. Those who consider themselves middle class today probably grew up in the same economy that I did. We were not a well-to-do country. We were not the next big thing. And we grew up relatively poorer, with worse infrastructure, worse living conditions. But those of us with opportunity and access to English language education, the internet, and a little bit of a global perspective with regards to information systems have gone on to more or less a standard of living that includes urban infrastructure, which is much better developed than it used to be. And this includes the kind of places we live in, the guarantee of water and electricity up to a certain point, and things like that do encourage a better standard of living. A lot of people go out to restaurants and order in from these restaurants, which was uncommon in those days. So essentially we're part of a better standard of living, and the middle classes of that time are no longer the middle classes. Today, those populations that are coming out of poverty, and India has been instrumental in lifting millions out of extreme poverty and millions more out of poverty, according to global estimates and a paper released by the World Bank and the IMF. And in fact, this is something that I have discussed previously, and you should be able to see that conversation with the co-author of that paper, Karan Bhasin, somewhere over here. But coming back, this class that calls itself the middle class is no longer the middle class. It's a reality that we have to deal with. We have more indulgences and more access and more opportunity than the middle classes had at that time. So we are sort of the cream of the cream at this point. And so we contribute a little more to nation building than others may have the opportunity to do at this time. So it is, as an individual, I balk at the amount that goes away into government coffers. I understand completely that so many of us feel that way. But if one thinks that one can't afford 15 lakhs in taxes, then please don't assume that someone paying 150 crores can actually afford those. It hurts everyone. And it is just part of living in a nation that is developing, that is post-colonial, that has not grown on the loot taken from lesser developed regions of the world, and that is trying to provide as much equitable growth to massive population that crossed over 1 billion recently. We're the most populous nation on earth, and we're trying to do good by everyone. So I hope this was informative, and if you've missed my last video on basic economics on how money grows, then I request that you look at that video. If you found value in this, I urge you to like and share this with friends who might also get a better understanding of how taxes work. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I'll see you soon.